This time on Andy's Motorcycle Obsessions, we're going to talk suspension. Well, g'day everybody and welcome back. And I'm here today with Phil. And Phil has a range of bikes at home. Lucky man he is. And they've all got adjustable suspension, different types. So do you want to talk us through first the Honda?
Okay, well this is a Honda CBR 600R road or race bike. Basically the suspension on this one are, we have preload adjusters on the top here in blue. These are basically used to set the ride height of the bike. Next to those are two adjusters for rebound damping, which we'll go over later. And then down the front we have compression damping at the bottom of the forks. Now basically compression damping controls the rate that the forks compress. The rebound damping controls the way the forks recover come back to standard setup. As you wind the dampers in, you increase the damping. Wind them out, you decrease the damping. Same on the back. Now on the back, on this, which is running a WP rear shock, we have got similar controls, whereas you can set the preload, which is compressing the spring on the shock by rotating this knob. Clockwise compresses the spring and gives you more preload. On the top here we have our compression damping. On this particular race shock we have low speed and high speed compression damping, so we can again control how quickly the bike will compress on the rear. And underneath, down the bottom, there is a collar, which again, by rotating clockwise I can increase the rebound damping, or by winding it anti-clockwise I can reduce the rebound damping. And again, the preload is used again to adjust the height of the rear of the bike.
Okay, so I guess in layman's terms, what we're trying to achieve is you have a mass, which is your unsprung weight. So your wheels, your brakes, your swing arm, all of those components that aren't attached to the frame of the motorcycle need to be controlled. So you've got kinetic energy that we're trying to slow down and take control of to keep the wheel planted on the ground. That's the whole objective here, is it not?
Yes, yeah. We want the tyres to be doing the grip and the suspension to be doing the maintaining the tyres to the ground.
Okay. So I've gone down the road and I've just bought myself a brand spanking new CBR or something like that that has adjustable suspension.
Yep.
Out of the factory, they're going to be okay for the average bike, the average rider, average weight.
Yes.
I suspect. So what's the best approach, Phil? What would be the best advice to give people who are looking to maybe start tweaking that? Is there anything that they need to be wary of, or is there anything that should they just attack with gear band and just go and try a few different settings?
Well, I guess when you're looking at getting a bike, exactly what you just said, the bike is set up for a standard person. Now, luckily I'm about 85 kilos, and I'm the average person that they set them up for, but you know, most mates can be lighter than that or heavier. So they're trying to set a bike up to suit this one person, and there's many different shapes and sizes. So the major thing you can change is the sag on. You can adjust the preload front and rear of the bike, which will then give you the ride height of the bike.
Yep.
And that's something you can adjust depending on your weight.
Right.
So that is one thing to do. The second thing, if you're buying a second-hand bike, is that the first thing you should always do is check the actual settings on the bike, because it's amazing how many bikes have been played with, adjusted, that are just totally wrong. So the first thing to do is open up your owner's manual, and in there it will actually be saying rebound is this, compression is this, this is how much preload we normally have for the average person. So start off with what the manual says is the standard one, and we'll show you how to set the sags on the bikes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So with the with the sag, you measure from your axle to a point on the frame,
Yeah.
and record that measurement, and then you sit yourself on there with all of your gear fully dressed as if you were going for a ride. The bike needs to be sitting vertically and on the wheels, so if, you need to have somebody perhaps help balance the bike, and then you take a measure from the same point and see how much the bike has squatted down with your weight on it, and that is what we call the sag.
Yeah.
And we're probably aiming on a road bike, I'm guessing about 20 millimetres. Would that be about?
They change. They reckon between your sag is generally a quarter to a third of your complete suspension travel is to maintain. Again, the manuals will sort of state there's a suggested sag height for road use and a suggested ride height sag for track use.
And the track, I imagine, would be less. You would want more preload.
Yeah, well, generally on the track is more with the damping as such. You'd have your compression and rebound damping a few clicks more than road use, and you might have slightly more preload.
And is that because you're just riding more violently? You've got more inertia coming into the corners. You're braking later. You're putting it under more load. Is that the reason, or is it just the bike response? It'll turn in tighter. It'll feel shorter. Yeah. All of those things.
Mixture of both. On the track, you're obviously riding a lot more aggressively, but the tracks are generally smoother. When you set up you can set up a bike one of three ways. The standard in the manual, it gives you a standard setting, which is for general road use and suits most Joe Blows. Can enjoy that and you wouldn't really notice anymore. When you go to the track where you are, obviously you're braking excessively, you're braking a lot quicker, you're accelerating a lot harder, so you're using the extremes of the bike. You don't want the front to be diving down so much.
Right.
You're going to be on the gas a lot more, so you're transferring the weights from the front and rear a lot more aggressively.
So what feedback would I be looking for? I'm new to suspension settings. I want to go for a ride, whether it's a track day or whether it's on the road.
Yeah.
What am I looking for as I'm under brakes approaching a corner? Like what is good? What does good look like? That's a difficult question to answer.
The thing being is once you've got your sag height adjusted, your bike is now it's at the ride height that the factory wants you to have. So when you have bikes set up for racing, you might have the rear end of the bike higher and the front lower, so it will turn into the corner a lot quicker. Will feel a lot better. But coming out the corner, it can be a bit unstable. But on a track, that's fine. When you're on the road, you don't want to be that aggressive, because if you've got the back end up and the front end down, coming out the corner, you can get the front end get tank slappers, which obviously you don't want. So you have to find a balance between how you ride the bike, I guess. The things with damping is that if you have the damping fully off, it is literally like a pogo stick. So you're just riding on springs and you'll just bounce off the road. If you have your compression too far in, the suspension can't recover. So for compression damping, when you go over a bump, the compression damping has got to be set enough to be able to absorb that bump. But then the rebound damping you've got to recover back to your normal position before you hit the next bump.
Yeah,
and what you can get there is they call it packing, where if you have your rebound too hard, your suspension cannot recover. So the first bump's okay, second bump hasn't recovered enough. And so what you end up doing is your suspension starts lowering down because it cannot return enough.
Okay.
So if your rebound damping on the rear is too hard, your back end over serious bumps will start squatting down. The worst thing on the front, again, your front end can start squatting down.
Right.
So there's the balance between not too hard and not too soft.
And being compliant on the road is probably, as you said, a lot more desirable to have that compliance and just be a little bit not as aggressive and not
Yeah.
you know, wanting to get any head shake or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, you need to find that balance for you on the road, and also for the tyres you run and what you go into the what air pressures you're running in the tyres.
So, Phil, you've got a range of different bikes here with different suspension, but fundamentally they're all the same. It's only, I guess, the manufacturers put their own tweaks on there. This one, that's a full-on race shock on the back, is it not?
Yes, yeah.
So that's a full-on race shock. It's a white power shock, and as Phil pointed out earlier, you can actually adjust the spring here, as you can with a lot of shocks now. You were saying Ohlins and that now have adjustable preload
Yes.
externally. You don't have to break out the C spanners.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick look at the other bikes and the suspension on them, and you know what sort of idiosyncrasies they might have.
Yep.
All right, Phil. So what is this magnificent creature you've got sitting here on the lift?
Right. Well, this is old. This is a 30-year-old race bike from Britain called a Harris. This was re-engineered 2 years ago to race the Barry Sheen as a pre-modern motorbike back then.
Right.
Now running
That's at Eastern Creek.
Eastern Creek.
And it used to be the Festival of Speed, wasn't it? And then they renamed it the Barry Sheen Festival of Speed.
Yes.
And now it's just the Barry.
Well, no, it's not. It's the Barry. They've got rid of the name Barry totally now. So now it's just the Festival of Speed.
Right.
Again, I think.
Okay.
This is a Penske shock in here with a remote reservoir. In essence, the way the shock works is very similar to the one on the Honda, apart from the compression. The compression is on the top here to adjust the compression damping. Winding it in will increase the damping. Winding it out will decrease the damping. And again, the compression damping is controlling how much the back end will take the bump. Down the bottom of the shock, there's a red knob. I don't think you can see it. It's an analysed knob.
Probably can't, but we'll zoom in later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, with that one, you can grab that by your hand and you can click it around. So again, by rotating clockwise, it will increase the damping on a rebound, and by rotating backwards, it decreases the damping. Again, that's for the back end to recover from the bump you've just gone over. And then for the preload here on the top ring here with the circles on, we use a bar in there. By winding this this collar, it compresses the spring, and so we can adjust the preload of the suspension, which again is adjusting the ride height of the back. Second to the shock itself, there's this linkage at the top.
This
on a
guy up
wishbone.
here. Yep.
Yes. So this wishbone mechanism gives the unit a rising rate suspension. So initially it's about a 1-to-1 between movement of the back wheel to the movement of the compression of the spring. But the more the back wheel arcs upwards, the greater the ratio. So it actually increases the ratio.
The mechanical advantage on that.
Yeah.
So what's the advantage of that?
Generally, by going over the smaller bumps, it's a softer thing. The more you move, most shocks are in fact rising rate. When you get a road bike with with race shocks, you generally use a linear spring, but in a road one, you get the progressive spring. This gives the rear end the same as you would have it in the front as far as a progressive.
So it gives you a more progressive feed. The further it compresses, the greater the mechanical advantage. Is that right?
Yeah. And this is a gas reservoir, and the gas reservoir is basically to help stop cavitation of the oil, because the damper works in oil.
Yep.
And you don't want aeration in the oil to affect the damping. So.
And without that, actually, it happens very, very quickly. So as the piston slides through the fluid and comes back again, that cavitation happens very quickly. But putting it under pressure allows that separation between air and oil, and sort of really inhibits that cavitation.
Yeah, air and oil is your enemy.
It is your enemy. So, Phil, do you charge your own shock absorber reservoirs at all?
No, no. When this unit gets serviced, it goes off and they just they regas it.
They put nitrogen in there or whatever they're using?
Yeah, so it's set. I can't remember what pressure they run that at, but they charge it with nitrogen, and basically we just sort of say, we want to try a different spring rating. Mm-hmm. Go up a spring, go down a spring, depending on.
And you mentioned the term clicks. You'll often hear that expression, and you may even see it in your manual. And on some shock absorbers, when you go to adjust them, whether it be internal adjustments like on some of the old ones, where you put the tool down the centre for your rebound and compression, or adjustments on external spring over shock absorbers, it will be a detent and you'll feel it go click, click, click. So if they say 4 clicks in, out from all the way in, you wind it all the way in until you feel it touch, and then I think the first one back is 0.
0, yeah.
And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's your setting. So when people say go up 2 clicks, go down 2 clicks, that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
What about this beautiful creature? So what have you got here? You've got an Aprilia.
Yeah, this is the Aprilia RSV4 Factory SE that came out in 2011 to celebrate Max Biaggi winning the Superbikes.
Well, Superbikes, yeah.
Superbikes.
Mm-hmm.
So this bike comes standard with Olin suspension. So these are the Olin forks. Similar thing, the red anodised knobs are for preload. So again, winding them in will add preload. Mm-hmm. You put an Allen key down the middle to adjust the rebound damping.
Right.
And on the bottom of the fork, there's the one for the compression damping.
Right.
One thing also here that we can also do with the other bikes is that if we wanted to adjust the ride height of the bike, you can in fact raise and lower the front of the bike by dropping the forks in the triple trees. So by undoing the clamps, this is showing two rings. When they race these, they will drop the forks and have 3 rings showing. So in fact, they drop the front end by about 3 millimeters.
So when we do that, if you scribe an arc from the centre of your rear axle to the centre of your headstock bearing, mm-hmm. As you bring the forks up through the triple clamp, you lower the frame relative.
Yes.
And that means that your front rake angle is being changed, and also the trail, which is the measurement from the centre of your headstock bearings to the ground, and then you drop a vertical line from your rear axle and you measure that distance, and what that distance is your trail. Yes. We're trying to avoid a shopping trolley kind of scenario. We don't want tank slap, but obviously the less trail we have, the sharper that bike's going to turn. And Phil, you were pointing out earlier that on the Aprilia, on their factory, you can adjust all that.
Yeah, well, the steering head angle you can adjust. There's cams in here, so you can adjust the angle of your triple trees in relation to your frame. You can adjust you can move the engine up and down. You can move the pivot point of the swinging arm up or down. So you can adjust everything on this bike.
That is incredible. Yeah, that's for a road going bike. That is just super advanced, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think many people have bothered moving the engines or the swinging arms, because you just adjusting things like suspension and tyres, and then dropping forks and raising rear shocks is enough for most people to because it's all a compromise. You're trying to, as soon as you brake, the front end will dive. Because the front end dives, it changes the trail of the bike. It changes, it changes everything on the bike really. So the idea is that you're trying to maintain a geometry that's always changing from braking and accelerating.
Yes. So as the centre of gravity shifts under load from the braking and from accelerating, and also from side to side, the lateral movement of the bike, it's going to have an impact on the way it handles. And as you say, that you're trying to find that compromise.
Yes.
Getting a little bit down the track from where we want to be, really, in terms of that kind of technology. But I think it's just important to point out that these beautiful bikes, they cost good money, and they cost good money for a reason. that's the sort of adjustments that you see on MotoGP bikes and World Super bikes. It's it's a bit of a rarity, I guess, for a road-going bike.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there you go. The Reader's Digest condensed version of motorcycle suspension, adjustable motorcycle suspension. I guess the moral of the story is don't be afraid to just go and have a play. Go from sort of one extreme to the other and then find your balance in between. Always take care when you're doing these types of experiments. Don't go putting yourself at risk, and do it in a safe and controlled environment. Well, anyway, Phil, thank you very much for letting us into your shed with your bloody beautiful array of toys that you've got here, and imparting some of your knowledge on us. So thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
So that's it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll catch you next time on Andy's Motorcycle Obsessions. Bye for now.